Hello, everybody, and welcome back for video number 24 in this series. I'm getting some lecture notes ready for a 5 day long, 3 hour each day summer camp with high schoolers later this summer. And I wanted to do a practice run on the lectures, and instead of deleting the videos, thought I'd share them. Uh, so, the past couple of videos, we've been talking about storytelling, and the last little section of storytelling is my tips for storytelling. We're then we'll be ready to do some stuff with our characters, but until we have a story ready, it's kind of hard to know what to do next with our character. Just like playing, it's like, okay, we've got our character moving around this landscape and uh, done a few other game development features in the background, but why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? We need this story. And at one point in my life, a couple decades ago, I thought I want to be a novelist. So I spent a couple years focused on making sure I got 35 to 40 hours per week in writing, working on writing novels, because that's what I wanted to do. So I had to give it a try. Uh, and I have a few tips that I figured out from that time along the way. So just a short list of 4 tips, and then a process that I came up with uh, for when the story doesn't want to flow out, right? When you're approaching it like a job. If the story is flowing out so quickly you can barely stop it, don't interfere with that. But if we're trying to approach this like a job, there's going to be times when we're not feeling creative, but we have to force out a story. And when, during the phase of my life when I wanted to be a novelist, I came up with a process that I worked really well for me for forcing out a story. So I thought I would share that for you for those times that uh, we just have to come up with the story, but we're not feeling very creative. But first off, 4 tips that I have for the storytelling aspect in game development. So the first one is actually kind of one of the most important that I found, and that is going to be write. Means actually do this, write drafts and edits. And the key part is write it. Whoops. Write it down. Um, do not keep it in your head. Get it out there, even if it's just the very initial rough draft that's uh, 15 words long, and you tell what's going to end up being would be a 3,000 page novel in 15 words. Get it written down so that you can start editing it and you're moving towards that process. It's not just something in your head. That's tip number 1. Oh, I should put the label on here. These are tips. And tip number 2, get your initial draft done as soon as possible. So remember, uh, you don't want to have the final version in the first draft. So you're going to come back and edit it. So this means ignore small errors. Um, you'll edit later. Little little glitches, as long as it doesn't crash for game development, as long as it doesn't crash the game, it can be edited to a final draft later. It's good enough for the first draft. Uh, allow excess. And this is another important one. Um, you edit out later. Put more than you need. Try to put more than you need in the first draft. It's easier to have too much and take it out than to suddenly find out you don't have enough and try to put stuff in. Because when you try to shove stuff in just to have enough, kind of like essays in an English class, right? You have 1,000-word essay do, and you finish everything you have to say, and you only wrote 700 words, those other 300 words that are just shoved in to get enough um, aren't going to fit, and they're going to hurt it more than it helps. So allow for excess in that initial draft, getting that down as soon as possible. And the third tip I have, uh, the third thing I found that was always useful for when stories need forced out. The tips and the process I'm going to go through, and just after going through the tips, are for when the stories aren't flowing naturally and you just have to force something out. And that's going to be always do multiple plots for a set of characters. And this relates back to this one, allow excess. It's better to have more plots than you need to tell your story, and then cut it back to just the best ones instead of trying to run with the bare minimum, because you might find that's not enough. And the fourth tip I have here, we've already seen this how it applied in code. It's kind of like that. I said never. I commented never delete code. Always comment it out and then delete it later. So never delete it immediately. And same thing with storytelling. Never discard an idea. Like brainstorming, keep every single idea. You try to keep every I spelled that word wrong. Discard an idea. Like brainstorming. Try to keep every idea you have, because even if it's not the one you're going to run with, maybe it'll inspire a better idea later. So just set aside and work on something else. Because even if it's an idea that's never going to come to fruition, it could inspire a great idea later, and you don't want to discard it for that reason. So that's the tips I have for writing. And I also come up with a short process that I would go through when a story needed forced out. And that process basically involved what's a good way to say this? Actually, instead of write, I'll say force out half a season of TV show. And that's like the structure for it. So, um, like split the document in three. Sections. So first off is going to be characters. Settings. Then the second section would be a synopsis. And the third section would be 11 episodes. And I chose that number because it's half of a season of a TV show. And it seemed like a good number to split it up. Then we could get into that ebb and flow and storytelling like we were talking about earlier with the avoid this happened and this happened and this happened, because this one is going to definitely be that episode 1 happened, then episode 2 happened, then episode 3 happened. And after we get that, then we can come back in and shove like another episode between 1 and 2, and 2 episodes between 3 and 4, and fill out a full season's worth of a TV show with the story, and just force a story out that way. And this was a method that worked good for me. I just was just sharing it. So list characters, I'll abbreviate it. List characters and setting with a short description. And when I say short description, I mean sentence fragments, not sentences. Just maybe a bulleted list of notes about the character or the setting that is going in. Just really rough idea, just forcing things out. The synopsis is a broad, rambling version. So technically not a synopsis, but that's what I always called it. That's the label I always put when I split up the Word document. The broad, rambling version. And then for the 11 episodes, a mini 3-act plot in each one. So a bunch of small plots that add up to the overall plot. And just because I was referring to a TV show does not mean I was writing a script for a TV show here. Like those 11 episodes might become 3 scenes in a video game, or they might become 5 chapters in a book, or they might become 36 episodes in a TV show, or they might become 10-minute blocks in a movie. So it starts with this thought. This is for forcing out an idea, and this is what I found worked for me. Just brainstorm some characters and some settings, and just a very short, fragmented description of each one. A broad, rambling version of what the story would be, and that has the overall plot. The overall plot of the story. And then break that overall plot down into like 11 episodes. And I would always picture a TV show in my mind when I was doing that. And each one has that the 3 acts to the plot, right? The introduction, the dire straits, and the resolution or absolution. And together, all those episodes add up to that overall plot. And that's the method I found that would work really well for forcing out a story. So I have a story in mind for this game I'm creating, but I'm going to kind of half mimic this method in the next video to put the story together so we know what to do in the next scenes of these videos on game development. So I will see you then. I hope you find this useful.